Drink told me the plan and I say I'm with it. We jumped in the car and went straight to the riches. Yeah, we went straight to the riches. He told me this one gon' bust both of our wrists. I told him he playing, he says no gimmicks. I told him let's get it. I told him let's get it like.
Alright, gangy, feel me? So yeah, I said the Traploreross dog is tough. We got murdered in the 6th, Toronto's deadliest gang. And so I'm gonna do 40 minutes of this and then I'm gonna do the rest tomorrow. Feel me? Don't forget, tap in my account 7, 8, and 9. Gang, I'm dropping videos 7, 8, and 9. I just need y'all to hit the like button. Make sure y'all subscribe if y'all haven't, and keep dropping some more stuff in the comments so I can keep reacting, gang. Feel me? Make this a team thing. Feel me? Y'all give me songs, I react. Feel me? We grow together. Feel me? Let's get it.
Gunfire breaking out in front of a packed nightclub. The chaotic scene left 3 people shot, sending a man in his 20s to hospital with life-threatening injuries. 2 others, a man and a woman, rushed to hospital with serious injuries.
They found this victim at the scene, suffering multiple gunshot wounds in life-threatening condition.
Artist has been connecting with fans on social media. There's just one problem. He's also on the run, wanted for murder.
I'm telling them, if they want to meet me, tell John Toy reach out. If John Toy reaches out, I'm linking up with anybody.
One man died on scene. Witnesses say he was shot in the head. The other taken to hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. The 3rd victim remains in hospital.
They try to frame me for some shit, nigga.
Are they trying to frame? Oh no, man.
I heard gunshots, and then I could hear like people yelling, and then you heard sirens for a good hour.
At 2 crime scenes, a man and a woman were dead, 3 others injured. The man killed in the club, covered up just beside the pool.
Welcome home.
Just watch. Very good.
Our residents heard several gunshots around 10:30 last night. Police rushed here. They found a 28-year-old man with no vital signs. I'm told he was shot in the head and actually died slumped up against the doorway of one of the units.
This was the scene last night of the city's latest homicide, where a 29-year-old man was shot dead.
A man masked up right here came, run around, started. Blah, 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 blah.
I know Canada might not be the first place when you think about gangs or drillings, and to many people, Toronto's most famous shooter is that idiot that gave Megan Thee Stallion a leg as. But make no mistake people, the streets of Canada are cold.
Man, free Tory Lanez, man.
The blocks are hot and anyone can get it. It's funny, in a lot of ways, the drill scene in Canada has a lot of similarity with the drill scene in the UK. But the reality is, Canada is a lot closer to the US, both geographically and in the locals' ability to access high-powered firearms. But before we get to the firepower, let me first give you a quick geography lesson. First off, you've got America, or more specifically, the Americas, you know, all of them. Then up top, you've got North America. And then north of the United States of America, in North America, is Canada. And in Canada, there are 13 provinces. One of those is called Ontario, and the capital city of that province is Toronto. And the wider surrounding area is known as the Greater Toronto Area, or GTA for short. And I'll tell you what, some of the stories we're going to talk about today sound like they are straight out of GTA 2. I mean, hell, Toronto's crack-smoking former mayor Rob Ford looks like something straight out of Los Santos. Anyway, the city of Toronto is split into 6 administrative districts: Etobicoke, Scarborough, Old Toronto, East York, York, and North York, which is where the majority of today's story will be taking place. But of course, like any story covering a long and illustrious street feud, there's always 2 sides to the story and 2 sides of town. And when it comes to the underworld of Toronto...
it's crazy. He showed the map and I asked in the Tales of Toronto, the Jane one, the one I did yesterday, I asked like, yo, what places to go to in Toronto? I swear when I asked that question, I didn't know Toronto was that big. I didn't know Canada was that big. I swear to God. So people gonna be like, yo, bro, Canada? I swear to God, I did not know. Y'all just put me on. I could go to a lot of other places, feel me? But I want to go to that place where, you know, Drake had, what is that? The site. I want to see that shit. I want to take a picture somewhere around there. I want to see that shit. I want to see that. Feel me? That's what I really wanted to do, honestly. When I really said that, I really want to see that shit with the... I don't know what that shit is called, but y'all know what I'm talking about. Drake always showed that shit. It was his album cover. I really want to see that shit, though, but... let's get into it.
Toronto, the city is further split into 2 distinctive halves, with a number of internet hood maps having circulated for years, showing the divide between Toronto's up top and down bottom gangs. Meanwhile, there are even more complicated and interactive gang maps that circulate online that can give you a much more detailed and nuanced breakdown of the smaller gang sets that run strips of turf in Toronto's underworld. So today, I'm going to break it all down for you, telling you the come-up story of some of the most famous Toronto rappers to come out of these areas, from Pressa to Top 5 to Smoke Dogg to Who Did Houdini, and I'm going to tell you about the many shocking murders that some of these rappers witnessed in the streets during their come-up, and I'm going to tell you the tragic stories of some of the people who didn't make it out. There's a lot of sad stories behind it, but the reality is Toronto's rap scene is absolutely booming. I'm excited to tell you everything about it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we're going to get to all of that, but first, a word from our sponsor.
Ooh, it's your boy VPN, young boy, shout out Alice VPN.
So first off, we've got the rappers and clappers coming from the north side, aka up top. Probably one of the most famous neighborhoods in Toronto drill culture is Jane and Finch, named after the nearby Jane Street and Finch Avenue. And you've also got nearby Driftwood off Driftwood Avenue and the Driftwood Core. Now, north side Jane and Finch and the surrounding areas have had a notoriously bad reputation in Toronto, with numerous articles having been written in the local media about just how dangerous it gets, with it regularly coming up as having the highest shooting rate in all of the city's police divisions. Of course, bearing some of the responsibility for the many local shootings are street gangs like the Driftwood Crips, who have been targeted by the Toronto police extensively. There was a massive bust on the Driftwood Crips in 2017 dubbed Project Chronic, where over 100 arrests and over 600 charges were handed out around 2017, with it even being said in court papers that the Driftwood Crips were out here supplying large amounts of fentanyl and cocaine to a network of dealers that even included Hells Angels biker gangs. These Driftwood mans are out here on some lost and damned shit. But it's not all about Bloods and Crips in North Jane and Driftwood. A lot of rappers hailing from this area with ties to the streets identify as 3L. Now, I'm pretty sure that 3L stands for 3 letters, and those 3 letters are SOS, which means shoot on sight. So yeah, you don't want to get cited by these guys. But of course, aside from the shooters, what we're really interested in are the musicians. And one of the first rappers from this area to put their hood on and pioneer original music in the area was Robin Banks. He was pushing a Chicago drill-inspired Toronto rap sound as early as 2014 after releasing the breakout track Don't Try Me, coming along with a music video that featured the local hoods of Jane and Finch and Driftwood extensively. But it wasn't just on the mic where Robin Banks was making moves, because he also started the Up Top Movement record label in an attempt to provide infrastructure and a system for his homies from the same area.
Does he still run that label though? Even though he, you know, what happened to him? He can still run a label though, feel me? He can still put people in position and shit like that. So is this label still running?
Also put out music. Now, Robin Banks would go on to drop several iconic songs in the Toronto drill scene, like Next Up, Marley's Off a Molly, Club TT, and eventually the Up Top Movement would even drop their Northside Jane mixtape, introducing the world to a whole bunch of Up Top affiliated rappers, who from 2015 have all tried to bring a certain kind of Chicago drill energy to their own Toronto hoods. And in my opinion, a lot of the music that's come out of the city is absolute fire. A lot of these guys have dropped trap bangers with hard beats, rapping about all the street goings on in their local area, telling the world for the first time the realities of life growing up hard in the most dangerous area of Toronto. But of course, naturally, that does mean plenty of dissing and smoking on ops. Anywho, some of the other big names that came out of that Northside Jane and Up Top movement include one of the most talented and most famous names associated with Toronto drill, Houdini. In fact, he was clearly destined for greatness in the drill world from early, after going viral as a teenager for posting a picture of him having put Chief Keef lyrics in his literacy test, which Chief Keef himself even retweeted. So Houdini begun his career collaborating on the track 456 along with fellow local rapper
Imagine you putting that shit on your test though, feel me? You putting Chief Keef, God we trust, thoughts we lust, Block 300, I don't love no thought. Imagine putting that on your test and your teacher reading that shit.
So Houdini begun his career collaborating on the track 456 along with fellow local rapper Burner Bands. Also on that track was the brother-brother duo the Tall Up Twins, made up of Double Trouble 4400 and 4400. Also coming out of Up Top, you've got rappers like YG35, YS, GD, FB. You've got another brother-brother rapping duo 21 Neat and 22 Neat or 22 Filthy, with those two rapping together under the name Neat Gang. But of course, probably the most famous name to have come out of Jane and Finch is the babyface badass Pressa. He's one of the very few and probably the biggest rapper to escape the streets of Toronto completely and go mainstream in music, moving to LA to focus on his career and get away from the violence. Now, Pressa has a crazy family history and he has been a real G from a very young age. His father, Mark Gardner, was a bank robber who went on to commit murder in 1996, apparently calmly shooting a bouncer dead outside of a community dance because he had made him wait too long to get in. Pressa's dad got sentenced to 15 years to life for murder, with a brief attempt to get out of jail thwarted in 2010 when he was accused of still running a gang from behind the wall. In fact, he even managed to get a brief stint on bail, which ironically took place while Pressa himself was in jail.
Yeah, he's still locked up. He came out on probation for like, I don't know, I can't remember, probably like just under a year or maybe. And then he got violated for his parole, so he's still in there now. Actually, when he came out of jail, I went into jail. He came out and he was like answering my calls now, you know?
Anyway, Pressa's dad was aptly
That's
nicknamed
tough. You
Prestige.
can't even see
And
your
this is where
pops.
Pressa's rap name comes from. Prestige, Pressa, Prestige, Pressa. Now, Pressa himself got his first big debut in the rap game on the 2015 posse cut Was Gang. The track itself featured Pressa, Robin Banks, GD, and FB and was a tribute to their fallen friend Wasi, which is why sometimes you'll hear the G's from these areas referring to themselves as Wasi Gang too. Now, similar to Robin Banks, Pressa and his brother would actually go on to start their own record label, Blue Feather Records. And once his career picked up steam, Pressa went on to have one of the most illustrious careers of a non-singing rapper to ever come out of his city. But we'll get to Pressa's impressive run in the music industry later on. But for now, let's look at some more demons. Because around 20 minutes drive away from Jane and Finch is another notorious Toronto hood named Lawrence Heights or Jungle. And this is home to Go Get 'em Gang, aka the GGGs, aka the GGs. This is a feared crew of Toronto hitters, headed up by the self-proclaimed demon of Toronto, Top 5. And his story is crazy. Now, he picked up a lot of steam back in 2014, 15, 16, when he was only 16 years old, when the self-styled Shirt Off Shorty dropped the tracks Hall of Fame with Robin Banks, followed by the track Shirt Off on Any Block. You know, his thing was that he had his shirt off all the time. He was Shirt Off Shorty. And eventually, these Shirt Off 6 hood anthems managed to attract the attention of the 6 god himself, Drake, who would give Top 5 shirtless shout-outs on his IG numerous times, as well as even going as far as to shout out Top 5 on hit songs like his collab with Future Grammy, with that shout out giving Top 5 a moment of supercharged clout that he reacted to with sheer delight. Drake would go on to drop the short film Jungle, supposedly inspired by Top 5's hood, and Top 5 himself would end up spending time personally rubbing shoulders with Drake himself. But don't let that sweet shirtless boy fool you. Top 5 is not to be played with. In fact, he would later go on to claim that all that hanging out with Drake was because he was Drake's shooter.
If somebody that doesn't like Drake comes to the city, we're taking care of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a shooter, basically.
Yeah. So you the
I'm just a
streets.
shooter.
Why he confessed to that though?
Now look, that's all fun and games, but the truth is, Top 5 has been attached to some serious crimes. But we're going to get into all of that to the GG's lineup. Top 5 also had a brother that went by the name Foolish, as well as a homie that goes by the name Flipper, who Top 5 actually collaborated on his 2019 song Drill Some More, and you've also got Top 5's right-hand man 100, who I've personally got a lot of love for purely because he's one of the few Toronto rappers that actually raps over UK drill beats. And just a bit of advice for any Toronto mans that are just trying to blow up real fast, that's what we're trying to hear, man. Jump on those Pop Smoke beats, you're going to be popping. Check out 100's track, Pop Out, you'll see what I mean. In fact, while we're on the topic, I also can't forget the GG's top UK shooter, Roadman Shaq.
Man's not hot right now. You're done now. We're over here, top 5. UK to Toronto team. Pull up, come on, man. We come, man. The thing goes scrap.
But really though, I know there's other Toronto rappers coming out of these areas that I could talk about, but I haven't got all day, and these are the rappers and areas that are going to be relevant to the stories that we're going to be talking about today. So before we get into the dangerous feuds that these guys have had on the streets of Toronto, we've of course got to take a closer look at the opposing crews on the other side of town, down bottom. So in opposition to the crews we've just mentioned, there's a number of other hoods around Toronto that have issues.
So we got up top and then we got the jungle.
With the up top rappers. I've seen some of these crews described as down bottom, but really Toronto's gang politics is kind of complicated, and there's a handful of all splintered little groups having their own little beats. So I'm just going to make this as simple as possible. But one of the most significant areas on this side of town involved in Toronto street beefs is Regent Park, which is also described as one of the most dangerous areas in Toronto. And one of the most famous rappers coming out of Regent is of course Smoke Dogg. Away from the streets, he'd had an early crack at the rap game around 2014-15, with one of the first songs he dropped being the track Still, aka Rabber. He dropped that track along with his homie Mo G, with both of those guys being members of a crew called the Halal Gang, a set of Islamic Toronto street rappers, which Toronto police classify as having their origins in Regent Park street gangs. Now, along with fellow members like Puffy Els, Safe, and Mustafa the Poet, the Halal Gang had truly put on for their neighborhood and done a lot to drive the Toronto drill sound forward. Smoke Dogg's 2018 track Trap House was a breakout hit for him, putting him on the map worldwide. Now, in addition to Regent Park, Rexdale is another area that's been a rival to Jane and Driftwood for quite some time. Being just over 10 minutes drive from Jane and Finch, Rexdale is yet another area with a feared reputation. The Rexdale Crips have a long history that stretches back decades. In fact, MindSoul6 on YouTube has a great video breaking it down, go give that a watch if you're interested. But here in the modern day, the area of Rexdale has spawned a number of poppin' rappers out of Toronto. This includes Nav, who isn't really in the streets like that, but also the likes of Young Lava and his brother Young Dubs, Ilium Pay Payback. And from the older generation of Rexdale Gs, you've got the likes of Sizzlak, aka LV, who was from Jamestown, Rexdale, and repped a crew called IDS. Sizzlak had the song Realist in the Six, and apparently his ops in Jane and Finch hated him and was straight up IDSK. And another big name from this area who you will definitely hear referenced in a lot of the opposition's songs is Slugger. Clearly the beef between these Rexdale mans and the crews coming out of Jane and Finch was incredibly heated, and the disrespect for the people that lost their lives as part of this feud continues in music to this day. Now, yet another hood that is relevant to this story is Falstaff 234, who have a long-running beef with Lawrence Heights, aka Jungle. Coming out of Falstaff, you have rappers like Nine, who also raps over UK beats sometimes. His track Too High is a straight-up banger, along with a few other names who aren't really relevant to this story, and another name that you are going to hear mentioned from Falstaff later on is Clutch. And then finally, you got connections on the south side of Jane and Finch, near Turf Grassway, home to the rapper Doovie, who makes fire music, by the way. He's kind of bringing a sort of NBA young boy, Lil Baby vibe to Toronto. It's good. So him, along with NHS JJ, are from South Jane, and they're going to get involved in the beef towards the end of this story. Now look, I know that's a lot of people, and I could really go on forever. There's a lot of parts of the city and parts of the story and other rappers that I could talk about, but we've got to draw the line somewhere, and these are the people we're going to be talking about today. So now you know who's involved, it's time to get into the back and forth between these crews.
I like that breakdown, I ain't gonna lie. Now, I already understood everything though, but that, like, for somebody that didn't know where the sides of that and the names and shit like that, feel me? Now we know the Highlight Gang, feel me? What is it? Rex, Doovie, and that gang, feel me? Uptown, the Jungle. Okay, we good. That shit's close as hell, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Taking a look at the music that's dropped out of these areas, how the Toronto rap scene evolved into what it is today, and unfortunately, the insane amount of bloodshed that had to take place in order to make the scene what it is in 2021. Now, like I said at the start of this video, gangs are nothing new in Toronto, and the cops in the city have been spending decades trying to crack down on and bust the clappers and trappers that run these parts of the city. There was the 2005 Project XXX. These were busts on senior leadership in Rexdale Crip gangs, aiming to break up the so-called Jamestown crew. Then you've got 2007's Project Cryptic, a big bust on the Driftwood Crips, but it was a 2011 bust named Project Marvel, targeting a Jane and Finch-based street gang where our story begins.
Handguns, automatic rifles, and more than $100,000 in cash. Items seized during yesterday's cross-country crackdown.
Yes, in a series of nationwide raids that took around 60 gangsters off the streets of Canada, Project Marvel was the authorities' attempt at disrupting organised crime gangs, running things in Toronto's toughest neighbourhood. The indictment claimed that Jane and Finch gang, the Young Buck Killers, were running drugs, guns and cash all over the city, running the streets so ruthlessly that eventually the cops just had to step in. Around 10 people named in the indictment were young offenders, and this includes a 15-year-old YG and a teenage Pressa, but it wasn't the teenagers that the cops were really looking to bust. The feds were really trying to throw the book at the senior leadership of the YBK, with the cops' real prize being Pressa's older brother, Kemar Gardner, who would later start rapping under the name Boondog. Court documents allege that Boondog was the leader of the Young Buck Killers, calling them a violent gang and crack dealing operation. And things weren't looking good for Boondog. The court documents even referenced a picture.
Pressure and his family is that guy, I heard. They said one of Pressure family member tried to rob a bank. Pressure family don't play, boy. I fuck around with Pressure, man.
Picture that he had taken of himself posing with a bunch of $100 bills spelling out the initials of the gang YBK. That, along with a bunch of other evidence, would make this case incredibly hard to fight, because when Pressa's family home was raided, the cops found numerous guns that were linked to shootings that they tried to tie to Pressa and Boondog. In fact, when Boondog went to trial, he was even apologetic to the judge, saying that he wanted to set a better example for his younger brother Pressa. Sadly, the remorse didn't really do him any favors, and in the end, the judge slapped him with a whopping 10-year sentence for around 14 drug, gun, and gang-related charges around 2015. Funnily enough, during the case, we found out that informants had allegedly told the police that the teenage Pressa was actually next in line to run the gang after his big brother. But funnily enough, Pressa wasn't even around when all of this went down, because he was already locked up for selling dope from his mother's house at only 15 years old.
Yeah, my brother got convicted for organized crime, the Project Marvel YBK raid. That was 2011, the end of 2011. I was currently incarcerated. Like, I was selling crack through my mom's house and stuff, and I could talk about it because I got convicted for it, you know?
Pressa ended up doing 14 months for this in a Young Offenders Institute, all the while his brother is getting jammed up and his name is being mentioned in the Project Marvel papers. Pressa eventually got out of jail and then had to go on the run for attempted murder, getting caught, doing time, and then beating that AM charge.
You were on the run for attempted murder?
Yeah.
They finally caught you?
Yeah, they caught me. They caught me halfway across the other end of the country. I did end up doing like 9 months in jail. I beat the case.
So basically, Pressa spent many years ducking and diving in the mean streets of Toronto.
He did like 2 years. So the first time he had to 14 months, so that's a year and 2 months. Then 9 months, so that's like 11. That's like 2 years overall. That's not bad.
All the while, people around him on both sides of the
And he
city's
was on the run.
complicated gang beef are dying in the streets like it's nothing. Pressa would lose one of his closest friends on July the 25th, 2015, when his friend Wasi, real name Kwasi Skeen Peters, was on the run for a double murder that occurred less than a month before. Whilst on the run for these charges, Wasi was eventually caught one night by the cops, who found him sitting in a car outside of a Toronto nightclub. Guns were pulled, and sadly Wasi was killed by the police in a firefight in downtown Toronto.
Over there, around the corner, there's a vehicle with about 7 or 8 or perhaps more bullet holes in it. According to the SIU, it all happened after 2 a.m. and that's when police officers approached a vehicle on Peter Street and an altercation started. Now, somewhere during that altercation, a 21-year-old man was shot.
21-year-old Kwasi Skeen Peters of Toronto was shot by police overnight in the entertainment district. He's wanted on 2 counts of first-degree murder in the double shooting in a building on Lisgar Street. Now, Abdouali Abdoulaye and Mohamed Abdouel Diri, both 26 years old, were gunned down in a 22nd floor unit of a building on Lisgar Avenue on June the 28th. Another suspect surrendered to police days after the incident.
Of course, the loss of Wasi was devastating for the young guys coming out of the Uptop area. The Tall Up twins honoured his memory with a set of chains bearing Wasi's face, and Pressa would later discuss just how hard it was losing Wasi in a moving Vlad TV interview. The loss of Wasi was really the catalyst for Pressa's rap career, and as a tribute to their fallen brother, Pressa, along with Robin Banks, GD and FB, would make the tribute song Wasgang. However, while rappers on each side of this street beef begin to make their first significant movements in the music industry, the beef in the street continues on, because only a week after the murder of Wasi, on the 4th of August 2015, a gunman opens fire in the music nightclub where Drake is hosting an after party for his OVO festival, and this shooting leaves 2 people dead at the scene.
It was almost 3:30 in the morning. Also flying shots that rang out, sending thousands fleeing. At 2 crime scenes, a man and a woman were dead, 3 others injured. The man killed in the club, covered up just beside the pool.
Literally, our officers were running towards live fire.
Police were right in the thick of it.
The deceased victims were named Duvel Hibbert and Aurelia Navarro Fenoy, a man and a woman. And the police actually came out to say after the incident that the male victim was known to them from having been convicted of firearm offences in the past. And eventually the internet detectives over on Reddit's Torontology, which is basically the Canadian version of Chiracology, identified that male victim Duvel Hibbert as Slugger from Rexdale. Now, Slugger was clearly not well liked by some of the uptop rappers like Pressa. He would actually go on to disrespect Slugger in one of his biggest songs to date, saying on attachments that Slugger got hit up in the party and did a dance. As well as going on to say in his song Secondhand Smoke that he passes the blunt to the guy that hit up Slugger. Furthermore, other uptop rappers like YG posted up on Instagram saying they were smoking Slugger pack. Meanwhile, following that shocking incident at Music Nightclub, Drake himself would send condolences to Slugger and the city, saying that he is plagued and pained by the violence that continues to escalate in his city, saying that he wants to encourage the new generation to show as much value and gratitude as you can for the life that you've been gifted. Sending his condolences to both of the deceased and all the families who have lost loved ones to the senseless violence that continues in Toronto. Drake is right, the senseless violence going on the streets of Toronto is a true tragedy. But fortunately, as the local music scene developed, people on both sides of the war in Toronto streets were beginning to see a route out of the struggle through music for the first time. In fact, it was also the very same month, in July 2015, that Smoke Dogg would release his song Trap House. This gets him some mainstream attention, with the song eventually getting a French Montana remix that debuted on Drake's OVO Sound Radio. Drake began to show Smoke Dogg love publicly, letting him open up for him on tours overseas, including in the UK where he met grime legend Skepta, with them 2 recording a fire collab overseas. Meanwhile, the local rappers back up top were also beginning to see their music take off. Robin Banks had dropped his first breakout track, Up Next, as well as the solo hits Marley's Off a Molly, and his collab with Top 5 Hall of Fame also picking up a lot of steam. And following the release of Wasi Gang, Pressa also continues to drop music, like the track Black Mask with Big Bills and GD, and he eventually went on to drop these solo bangers like Demi Hana and To Be Honest. But unfortunately for Pressa, in April 2016, the war in Toronto would reach a dark new low, and Pressa would end up catching a serious case, getting charges that would haunt him for around a year and a half, just as he was beginning to make waves in the music industry. But this wasn't just a regular shooting or beating that you would expect a drill rapper to get caught up in, because the details of this crime were so incredibly shocking and serious that it's by far one of the most twisted things I have ever covered on this channel. The streets of Toronto reached a new low in April 2016, when allegedly members of Toronto's young buck killers were throwing a party at a rented apartment. At some point, members of a rival Queens Drive Crip gang tried to crash the event, leading to an armed standoff in a hallway where around 8 to 10 shots were fired. Apparently, shots rang out after members of YBK rode up to the apartment in an elevator, getting out of the 25th floor to confront the Crips that had crashed their party, and immediately opening fire when the elevator doors open in a scene that was caught on CCTV and looked like something straight out of an old western. Now, in this clip, we see a gunfight in the hallway, followed by an alleged YBK member getting shot at. You can barely make it out in the footage, but essentially a bullet grazes his head, narrowly missing, and after dodging the bullet, he drops to the floor, sliding over to take cover behind the closing elevator door. That bullet in the elevator looked a hair away from being fatal, and as a result, the YBK members that had been shot at would...
I told you, man, L shooter, man, cause we would look back on the news and people wasn't dead. I would have been tight if I was them, bro. I would have been tight. I would have been tight. You gotta clear that. You gotta clear that up. You gotta
come back with a serious response.
Bloody.
Allegedly, the YBK members reconvened at a house in Swansea Mews, where they decided that they would target 2 people who had supposedly told the Crips that their party was going on. With it being said that the next day, the YBK members summoned 2 17-year-old Crips to a property. Now, I'm not sure what they thought they were going there for, but when they arrived, they were then held captive for around 48 hours, over which time they were subjected to cruel and unusual torture, the likes of which I have never encountered in any kind of drill or gang story in the developed world. According to the police, the 2 17-year-old youths were tied to a chair and beaten. During their beating, they were forced to play Russian roulette with a loaded handgun, and a shot was fired in the premises. And whatever was going on at that property was so bad that the police received multiple reports of suspicious activity and even visited the property. As a result of this added attention, the victims were then kidnapped and moved to multiple locations around the city to escape the cops as the abuse continued. And at this point, apparently things escalated even further, with it being reported that the 2 kidnappees were forced to do things of a sexual nature with each other. And that's not all. Apparently, these acts were filmed, and then the kidnappers got in touch with the victim's family, negotiating a ransom for their release. And the details for this ransom were apparently $3,000 for the release of the 2 kidnappees, and a final payment of $7,000 within a week, or the videos would be released. I've never heard anything so messed up in my life in one of these stories. So apparently the ransom demands were met, and the victims were released, eventually winding up in hospital, at which point apparently one of the victims made a statement to the police, which was then immediately withdrawn, but apparently there was enough forensic evidence for the police to go ahead and build up a case against the kidnappers without even having cooperating victims.
That's the Pressa situation, right? Pressa and his man's pistol. That was their situation, right?
Victims. And the police would go on to formally identify a number of potential kidnappers, even going as far as to identify the mother, sister, and grandmother of one of the suspects as people of interest too, because it was alleged that one of the places that the victims was brought to was a family home where everybody was in while this was going on. So, a few days after this ordeal all plays out, on April the 23rd, North Jane rapper Pressa, real name Quentin Gardner, is arrested on charges of kidnapping for ransom, unauthorized possession of a firearm, and assault with a weapon. And when he got to jail, Pressa would quickly end up getting into a fight with some rivals there too. However, there would be some hope waiting for young Pressa on the other side of the wall, because while he was described as a primary instigator of the violence, Pressa's lawyer maintained that he had only played a minor part in the incident, and Pressa wasn't identified as the ringleader of the attack, as apparently the most severe punishment in this incident was doled out by a 17-year-old named Ty Shay Pistol Gordon and a 23-year-old named Lincoln Anthony Richards, with cops saying that they were both last seen in the Lawrence Heights jungle hood. Now, miraculously, in spite of these serious charges, Pressa was able to make bail, during which time he would be free for a whopping 18 months. And thankfully, Pressa truly used this time wisely, focusing intensely on his music career rather than the streets, finally giving himself an opportunity to escape the violence that had plagued him and his family for years.
Pressa got lucky, boy. God timing, gang. God timing, boy.
Pressa's 2016 track Demihana was still picking up steam when he caught his case. Now, that track was actually inspired by Chicago drill songs all about smoking your dead ops, and naturally, it was picking up a bit of steam over in the United States. Pressa also dropped the song To Be Honest in February 2016, and when he got out on bail for those kidnapping charges, he just kept on dropping. Tracks like 100 Wassy Bars, John Connor, and Lavish, with these tracks leading up to his 2017 mixtape Press Machine. Then his January 2017 hit Novocaine along with Murder Beats was a hit, quickly picking up the attention of both The Weeknd and Meek Mill. And apparently Meek Mill even tried to sign Pressa for a measly $20,000.
Tried to sign Pressa for like $20,000, and he was going to give him a 10-month leased, like, was it like a Rolls Royce? Yeah, it was a Rolls Royce.
That's fucked up. Damn, Meek. He worth way more than that, gang. Artists. Anybody in life, know your value, gang. Know your worth, gang. Don't let these people low blow you, gang. You know your worth.
Anywho, as he continues to pick up steam, in February 2017, Drake is seen rapping Pressa's Novocaine on social media whilst he's in the UK. Now, Pressa actually went over to London to network in the music biz, where he ended up linking up with Drake himself.
You see how Drake lined people up? And Drake listened to his song in the UK. Now he's getting shows in the UK. You see how Drake just be... Yo, whew. Drake is that guy, bro. You don't even... It's like he sneezed and he's still... Like, he blessing you. Like, real shit, bro. Like, that's love, bro. And then, like, it's not like... Like, he forcing this shit. Like, yo, make sure y'all... He doing little shit, like, little shit. He showing niggas, like, yo, I'm that guy, bro. I could put you in my story and make you lit in a whole different country. That's tough.
Pressa actually went over to London to network in the music biz, where he ended up linking up with Drake himself, who was out there on a European leg of his tour. Pressa even posted up a picture with Drake, along with a caption saying that he had dropped $50,000 on a lawyer. This chance meeting with Drake eventually turned into a full-blown opportunity for Pressa to open up for Drake on tour, with Pressa opening up for Drake in Birmingham, that being his very first show. But the craziest thing of all was the fact that Pressa was even given permission by the court to join Drake touring all over Europe while he was on bail for these serious kidnapping charges. But they let him go, and this really was a genuine opportunity for Pressa to go and do something productive and stay out of trouble, and I guess the courts could actually see that for once. So Pressa joined Drake on tour along with Smoke Dogg from the opposing hood, leading many to believe that during this time Pressa and Smokey had become friends, with them even collaborating during this period. The thing is, not everyone was thrilled about Pressa joining Drake on tour. I mean, he was still sort of on bail for kidnapping and torture. Many articles were ran around this time asking what Drake was doing to bring a serious accused.
The people that be mad be the broke ones. Feel me? What y'all mad for? I don't think the Pressure and Smoke Dogg, they probably ain't like each other, yeah, because they ops, but when you making that money, like, feel me? We supposed to kill each other, we making money, we trying to feed our family. You want us to kill each other because you in the hood broke and your feelings is hurt? Fuck your feelings, nigga. You trying to make this bread, nigga. That's why you in the position you in there, because you hating, nigga. That's why.
Criminal on his tour.
Rapper tours with Drake on European tour while on bail for serious charges.
And apparently the Toronto police were never even informed of Pressa's relaxed bail conditions, and the local cops were positively punching the air seeing Pressa running all over Europe having a good time, with the cops allegedly even contacting venues in attempts to get Pressa's show shut down from another continent. And we even got to witness Pressa finding out about his shows being cancelled firsthand in Noisy's excellent 6 Rising documentary about the Toronto drill scene.
Kidnapping and torture is just too far. Sorry for the late notice. The venue only raised the issue now. Sorry again.
Now, this was a dope documentary that covered a lot of aspects of Pressa's exciting come-up. And I think it's really important to just point out how focused he was at this time. He clearly wants to...
Like, think about it, feel me? You trying to make your money, you ain't do nothing. They got you on bail, but you ain't do nothing. You're not doing anything. And they still trying to stop your bread. You see, people just be hating, bro. You can never win. The devil is always working, gang. The devil's always working.
Exciting come up. And I think it's really important to just point out how focused he was at this time. He clearly wants to improve his life through the music and get as far away from the streets as possible.
But really, I'm out here. I'm the next guy to be doing it in the industry, you know? Well, what am I doing being a fucking gang member? What does that bring me? Like, you know what I mean? Running around Driftwood Court. Like, what am I doing there, you know? Like, I have better things and better plans for my future, like.
And throughout 2017, whilst on bail, Pressa truly did stay focused, using his time in the UK wisely to collab with Peckham rap legend Giggs on the track Sexy, with that coming out only a month after Giggs had appeared twice on Drake's More Life album, so you know Giggs is tapped in with these Toronto mans heavy. And Pressa went on to drop a whole second mixtape by the end of that year called Pressa Brick. That project featuring arguably the biggest hit of his career so far, Canada Goose, along with fellow Toronto shooter Tory Lanez. Canada Goose sits today at a whopping 23 million views. But the biggest W of all would come for Pressa at the end of 2017, when he was eventually cleared of all charges in that kidnapping case. This came after it was declared at a preliminary hearing that there wasn't enough evidence to identify Pressa as the alleged gunman who struck the victim in the head, with it being said that the victim had tried to identify Pressa using a YouTube video of him rapping, with all of that apparently just not being enough to wrap Pressa up in the case. Now, those other two guys that were picked up initially with Pressa were eventually convicted of the crime. Lincoln Richards was brought back to Toronto from Montreal to face charges. Interestingly, he was also a rapper that went by the name Ransky Gleachy. He got convicted and sentenced to 6 years, while the alleged ringleader, Ty Shay Pistol Gordon, ended up getting 9 years. So by the time the charges were dropped and the true ringleaders of the crime were sentenced, Pressa had made good on his promise to get out the streets, going legit as a rapper in the music industry. Pressa would eventually leave Toronto, moving to Los Angeles, going full Hollywood, even winding up in a romance with fellow squeaky-voiced rapper Coi Leray. But the thing is though, even after leaving the city, Pressa would continue to maintain his ties to the streets, but in his music, using his hit songs as opportunities to disrespect his ops, whether fallen or still standing. And even though Pressa turned his life around whilst on bail, not long after he caught that kidnapping case, a well-known rival from Rexdale would be murdered, becoming a name that Pressa would mention and disrespect in his songs frequently to this very day. I'm talking about Sizzlak, aka the realist in the Six. Pretty much the same day that Pressa was arrested for that kidnapping charge, Sizzlak, aka LV from Rexdale, is murdered. He was shot along with 3 other people who survived during a shootout at a townhouse complex in the early hours of the morning. And the timing of Sizzlak's death was incredibly eerie. He was killed only days after releasing his biggest song, Realist in the Six, which came with a music video that had numerous shots where Sizzlak disrespected his ops, including a scene where him and a shopkeeper throw gang signs resembling a 3L upside down, signifying that they are 3L killers, which if you remember, 3L is another name for the gangs coming out of Jane and Finch. And not only that, but one of the very last posts that he made on social media was an ominous image, still circulating on Reddit today, saying that even shooters get shot. And according to the internet, he was really about it. And when his death made its way to the media, after being identified, it was revealed that Sizzlak was actually charged in a double murder years before his death. These were the killings of Elliot T-Bone Hughes and Garth Nicholas Palmer, which Sizzlak never went to trial for, eventually having one charge discharged by a judge in September 2010 and another withdrawn in October 2011, with Sizzlak in the end copping to a guilty plea of aggravated assault, only getting a 2-year sentence, even going on to rap about beating 2 bodies on his song What You Know About Me. She man caught a body, I beat 2. Now, a lot of the ops have gone on to suggest that Sizzlak only beat those charged because he snitched, with Pressa suggesting in his song Attachments that there might be a reason that the ops don't post tributes to Sizzlak on their Instagrams. Thing is though, if you go and look at the court documents for that case, there's no suggestion that Sizzlak made a statement, and frankly, if you look at the details of this case, the crime scene was such a mess, it's no surprise that there wasn't really much evidence to go on when it came to Sizzlak's involvement. So look, I don't know about the snitching allegations, but what I do know is Sizzlak seemed like a pretty real dude, and if the internet's to be believed, he was definitely a feared member. This is probably—
Damn, that's fucked up, right? So his mans don't post him because they thought he snitched, but his man couldn't even pay the little bread to go get his paperwork to understand the truth. Now they not even showing love to him on the net. Saying rest in peace to bro. That's tough.
Why you hear the likes of Pressa and Top 5 dissing him so regularly, and even going further in what's probably one of the most creative gangland diss methods I've ever seen, as Pressa has been seen numerous times rocking a Louis Vuitton belt upside down, because another nickname for Sizzlak was also LV, and wearing the LV upside down is like a secret message signifying that LV got dropped, or that guys that are doing this are LVK, LV killers. And this is a trend that other up-top rappers would adopt, like Houdini, also spotted wearing the upside down Louis. I mean, you've almost got to give these guys points for creativity, but at the end of the day, the reality of this situation is this is just yet another young man from a tough environment losing his life before he really had a chance to begin it. But if you think that was bad, in the years that followed, the streets of Toronto would truly become a bloodbath. As in February 2017, news emerged telling of internal cleansing going on within the Regent Park based gangs, with the war being described as an internal feud between the Halal gang and Sick Thugs members, both from Regent Park. Now, I can't really vouch for how much violence in the streets is truly related to the music or the musicians that we've discussed in this video, but in 2016, a lot of young men and aspiring rappers from these areas would lose their lives in the most tragic circumstances. A deadly back and forth begun on the 23rd of March 2016, when an up-and-coming Toronto rapper named C Sick, real name Sion Carrington, is murdered.
This was the scene last night of the city's latest homicide, where a 29-year-old man was shot dead. City News has confirmed the victim to be Sion Carrington, seen here in this exclusive video from City News in June 2015.
Messages on the wall, candles on the ground in this alley on Carlaw near Dundas, where police found the body of 29-year-old Sion Carrington last Wednesday. He died later in hospital.
The way this has transpired, it leads us to believe that it was a targeted shooting.
After his usual Wednesday duties teaching kids basketball at the Regent Park Community Center, they say he was on his way to a recording studio at the other end of the alley. Investigators say Carrington and a friend were ambushed after getting out of a cab. The friend got away. Carrington was shot multiple times from behind.
Then, immediately following the funeral of Sizzlak, another man...
See, when a friend get away, I get ambushed. How do y'all know y'all going to the studio? Who told y'all going to the studio? I always think about the other shit, gang. Like, shit be sounding a little weird to me.
Was shot multiple times from behind.
Then, immediately following the funeral of Sizzlak, another man is murdered. He went by Santana, real name Julian Weeks.
Julian was found by 51 division officers lying on the ground, clinging to life, in a large pool of blood in the parking lot of the Shell gas station located at Parliament Street and Richmond Street. Due to the large amount of blood that was present, officers began searching the area and found trails of blood that led back to the Queen Street East area in front of 362 Queen Street East. Julian was attending a memorial celebration at Annie's Bar for his friend Sion Carrington. Sion was murdered on March the 23rd in the area of Carlaw and Queen in Toronto, much in the same way that Julian was, by a coward carrying a gun.
Now, the cops eventually identified a guy named Tyke, real name Michael Teddy Gibson, as the shooter. He was another rapper from Regent Park that had had some early success as part of the duo Turk and Tyke, so he went on the run and was caught a year later in Aruba after allegedly catching another body there. Then, a few months later, another aspiring rapper from Regent Park named Ruck, real name...
Yo, if y'all ever go to Aruba, Aruba has 0 crime rate, gang. Aruba is a beautiful, beautiful place, gang. Let me Aruba. You go to Aruba and got beef, you're the problem. You're really the problem. If you go to another country and start killing people, you're the problem, gang. You need to fix yourself. Like, what? It was good in Aruba? Niggas be fucking shit up.
Marcus Gibson is shot dead at a housing complex near Monroe Street and Dundas Street East, with cops later revealing that Ruck had previously been charged along with Sizzlak in a famous Toronto murder case. This was a crazy 2014 shootout at the Garden Chinese restaurant. This was the apparent result of a chain snatching gone wrong that was even caught on video. As two groups of men scuffle in the hallway of the restaurant, guns are drawn and a chain is taken. Now, I probably can't show you that whole video on YouTube, but trust me, it gets heated. Anywho, after returning to their tables, the robbed party tried to confront the robbers, at which point guns were drawn once again, but this time they were used, leaving a man shot dead in a packed restaurant with around 60 to 80 witnesses present. Both Ruck and Sizzlak were charged in that case, but beat the case. But within 2 years, they'd both been murdered. Basically, this was not a safe time to be a gangster in the streets of Toronto. The slightest confrontation could lead to tragedy, make a wrong move, and it could be your own gang shooting you next, which once again drives home just how much of a dead end the streets are, and just how important it would be for some of these up-and-coming rappers to use music to escape these horrible circumstances. In fact, there's one person in this story who was so close to escaping the hood through music before suffering some of the most tragic circumstances.
You gotta be talking about Houdini next. And if he brings up Houdini, we're gonna do it tomorrow, gangy.
Possible. And that person's name is Robin Banks.
We're not done yet. Let's get it. Let's get it.
As Pressa toured around Europe on bail with Drake, and the gangs in Regent Park were shooting each other in internal wars, Robin Banks was making progress with his music career and the Up Top Records movement. His earlier songs like Was Gang and Up Next were becoming local classics. His catchphrase TT or Two Turnt was becoming a catchphrase in the city. Tracks like Priceless with FB were racking up views, and rumours were swirling that Meek Mill was even gearing up to sign Robin Banks after he shared the song Priceless.
Robin Banks probably took that 20 in that Rolls Royce, feel me? For 10 months. He's like, fuck it, man.
To his IG page. But behind the scenes, not everything was sweet. In January 2017, somebody was shot dead after a Robin Banks music video shoot. Furthermore, it was alleged that around this time, Robert Banks had apparently owed a $10,000 debt to somebody in the city, with posts circulating that suggested that he had been hounding Robin Banks on social media for the money for weeks. Whether or not any of these things have anything to do with what happened next, I can't be 100% sure of, but the fact of the matter is, on the 4th of April 2017, things finally caught up to Robin Banks when he was on a night out at the Cameo Hookah Lounge. Banks was caught off guard when somebody opened fire, hitting 3 people, including Robin Banks, who was shot 14 times, getting 1 bullet in the neck and 9 bullets in his legs.
Gunfire breaking out in front of a packed nightclub.
The chaotic scene left 3 people shot, sending a man in his 20s to hospital with life-threatening injuries. 2 others, a man and a woman, rushed to hospital with serious injuries. Police are investigating whether they were targeted or just victims of being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Initially, Banks was reported dead, but in reality, he had been rushed to hospital in critical condition. Eventually, news spread that he had survived the shooting and was fighting for his life in hospital. Meek Mill sent prayers on Twitter, and the Toronto rap scene waited on the edge of its seat to find out what happened. Ultimately, Robin Banks escaped with his life, but was left paralysed, confined to a wheelchair. Naturally, the ops tastelessly made fun of this fact, but in reality, Robin Banks' injuries were no joke. Apparently, he was hurt so bad that his family had to take to the crowdfunding website YouCaring to raise a whopping $300,000 to cover his medical expenses. Tragic case, but at the very least, Robin Banks survived with his life intact, where the person responsible actually faced justice. Now, once again, an image has been circulated online that supposedly shows that loan shark that was after Robin Banks saying, "Got him," before turning their page private, but it's unclear whether or not this is real or belongs to the real suspects in the case. But what we do know to be true is that immediately following the shooting, the police actually pulled over and detained 2 suspects for questioning, but they didn't have any reason to keep them and they just had to let them go. Eventually realizing their mistake, the cops would put out a warrant for 2 people for attempted murder charges, Rashawn Anderson and Nicholas Roden, with the cops also identifying their black Honda Accord and its license plate, I assume from when they pulled them over. Rashawn Anderson turned himself into the police soon after the warrant was announced, while Roden remained on the run for a couple of months, eventually being arrested in July.
You think one gonna tell? You think one gonna tell? We all, feel me? We reacted to a few docs now, gang. Usually the first person that turns theyself in starts telling. Let's see.
July 2017, when he was caught with a 9mm pistol, an extended clip, and drugs.
Toronto police have arrested the 2nd suspect in connection with the North York shooting. The shooting happened in the parking lot of the Cameo Lounge near Steeles and Weston on April 3rd.
The duo responsible for paralysing Robin Banks were eventually held to account for their crimes a whopping 3 years later. And in August 2020, Nicholas Roden was given a life sentence, with his younger accomplice, Rashawn Anderson, being given 16 years. Both for attempted murder, with the prosecution saying both deserve to get life because the moral standing of the acts that they carried out on Robin Banks might as well have been murder. But fortunately, Robin Banks didn't let his paralysis completely crush his spirit, and once he recovered, he would continue rapping and releasing music from his chair, dropping the comeback song That's a No-Go, which featured news audio about his shooting, then going on to drop other big tracks like I'm All That and his mixtape Still Here, and continuing to push the Up Top movement as far as he could, overseeing the release of the Up Top Northside J mixtape, and generally just being an inspiring figure in the Toronto rap scene to this day, proving that you can survive the worst of the worst and still stay strong and not let it get in the way of building a fulfilling life, achieving your creative goals and chasing fulfillment. So for that, Robin Banks is a true inspiration for surviving what he went through and still continuing to pioneer and inspire the next generation of Toronto rappers. Big salute to Robin Banks for that.
Not gonna lie to you, Robin Banks, he's tough. He's tough, man. But I'm glad to see that he's still influencing the rap scene out there, because that's what I really want to know. I want to know, like, is he still helping people? Is he putting people on? Is that label? I don't think he answered that question about the label, but is that label still going on though? Like, what's popping with the label? But yo, gang, feel me? We at 41 right now, so 42 basically. Tomorrow we're gonna end the doc off, feel me? And then the next day after that, we're gonna go back to the Tales of Toronto. Y'all, appreciate y'all for real, feel me? Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, post some more stuff in the comments so I can react to it. What else, gang? Follow me on the gram. You already know the vibes. Give life a new meaning when you're dreaming. It's your boy Dream. I'm out of here, gangy.
Fake niggas, we don't do those. Fake niggas, we don't do those. Hardcore, weirdos, weird.